doing because she didn't feel like she was violating, right? And not that that's right or wrong, right? But if that's her argument, and her attorney's argument was that, listen, we didn't change what we were doing because we felt like we hadn't broken the law, is that an argument?
That's not an argument. That's like, for instance, you don't like a law, then, you try to change the law. You don't break the law and then say, well, I
Yeah.
can agree with the law.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse for committing a
Right.
crime.
No,
What
I agree with that, guys. I don't think that's. I just think I wonder. I have a problem with someone, whether it's Betty or anybody else, right? I don't even care that we're talking about Betty, just in general. If, say, I'm arrested for something, say they say I have a warrant, right? And when they search me, they find some weed in my pocket, so they charge me with weed too. But we get down to the jail and we find out, wait a second, this warrant isn't for you. We misidentified you. Then they would have to throw the weed case out too, because the arrest was unlawful. So then the detention for the possession would be unlawful. The search would be unlawful.
I get what you're saying. In my opinion, I think what Betty would be arguing is this whole she violated the ROs. And I'll be honest, I think she may have a good argument when it comes to that. Any good attorney could argue that, because if you recall, when they were before the judge last time, her attorney and Betty both asked, can you clarify exactly what is in the RO? Like, does that mean I can't hashtag and say names at all? Which does come a constitutional argument if given the right attorney and the right judge. So I can see her trying to get those charges dismissed. But as far as the ROs go, it's so rare that they will, especially the same judge, will modify, especially when more proof is presented. So Betty wasn't there to argue last time. And we all know her argument is based on fallacies, right? I didn't do this. I didn't do that. But it's all on camera. So the chances of those getting dismissed, even if Mrs. Bowersox never came in contact with Betty, doesn't matter. You don't have to be in contact. It's the threat of, and Betty has threatened many things. So my thing is, I think she could argue the whole, violation of the ROs, but not appearing and not having an attorney and not asking for a continuance isn't an excuse to have it all dismissed. You know what I mean? Like, then everybody would do that.
I definitely understand that. I see what you're saying with that. I think this is just something that's going to give everybody some perspective into what is and isn't allowed. You know what I mean?
Have you guys ever heard, right,
interesting.
ROs don't go in reverse? Have you guys ever heard a judge say, okay, well, you know what, I'm gonna give you this RO to protect you, to protect yourself, because I feel like you need these, and then go back into court and say, oh, sorry, I'm taking those away from you guys. I no longer feel like you need them.
Especially not when there's
never heard of that.
violations in between, right? Like, I could see if because appeals do take place and sometimes things are reversed, but in Betty's case, she has violated since. So the fact that there's been violations in between should further validate why this family needs protection. And a good example would be the woman Amanda who came on my panel, who's like a big Betty member and supporter and all the things. And yet she's calling Mrs. Bowersox and emailing her and threatening her and, relentlessly harassing her. And that's because of Betty leading the herd, if you will. So I can see them not holding criminal charges, but I can see them definitely keeping the ROs in place without a doubt.
Yeah, but then I wonder, like, what is to actually uphold the ROs? You know what I mean? Like, if this lady's not going to jail at all, then what's the point of them? You might as well just say, well, it's just a piece of paper that does absolutely jack and shit.
Unfortunately, that's what most ROs are, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
which is sadly a truth. But it would still keep her from, going in their, or they might modify to say, okay, so this wasn't broad, it was a broad statement because ROs are broad. You want it more detailed. Let's go ahead and detail it. No more hashtagging. Don't say their name at all. Blah, blah. And a judge can do that. But again, with her having an attorney, there's a good chance that they can argue that.
Well, so and on top of that, on top of that, it's the judge, in my opinion, once again, is giving way too much time if there wasn't some depth to the argument, right? He's taking up a lot of court time on something that in most situations would be here's your RO, here you violated, here go to jail. That's typally how it goes.
Yeah, but I've seen this before with the Turtle Boy situation.
Yeah, but you guys have to give the attorney time to present
Yeah, I mean, like the Turtle Boy, it's like a hearing. It's like they have to question each one of them. So the attorney has to question them. And then they have their own representation. They have their own attorney. So it's kind of like a mini court hearing that's happening.
We've seen it with Lana, too. Lana's RO hearings went continued for days and days. And there was shit to be said or shown. You know what I mean? Like, it was basically just back and forth like nonsense. So I mean, I was just in a hearing the other day that took 3.5 hours to see if an address was correct or not. So they can take very long, but I do understand what you're saying. If it was as easy as open and cut, which I don't believe it is, which is why I think there will be modifications. I just don't think there will be a dismissal at all. And I think it'd be pretty cruel. And I think you can't offer somebody that protection and say, well, you know what? Now she decided to come and argue it because she finally, responded to the fact that she was meant to be in court and she came with an attorney. So let's go ahead and dismiss them now. I think that would be crazy. But, I mean, not unheard of, but crazy.
I feel like a lot of this has been crazy, right? And I don't think anything surprises any of us. But on the same note, as much as I know a lot of people want justice for the actions that, they feel Betty has done, I do think that this will set a narrative about what can and can't be said in a good and bad way on social media. And I think we have to keep that in mind. As much as people want her to be punished for her actions, there's also a level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a level of what you can and can't do anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, see, the bad thing is the court systems are so far behind social media and technology that there's no laws put in place.
Yes.
So
that's exactly what I was going to say.
I'm sorry, baby. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just completely agreeing with you.
I'm just saying we have to go off what's already put in place. But I mean, by that statement, they're nowhere near ready for social media. There's not laws put in place yet.
When the constitutional rights were made,
there is okay. Let me back it up. There are laws that are being put in place, as we go, as you know what I mean. But it's just the system is so far behind.
I would disagree with you on that.
Well, because the constitutional rights were made, so damn long ago that social media wasn't a thing. A lot of things that are happening today wasn't a thing. So a lot of states are behind on, or they're just acknowledging it when it comes to children, right? Like there's tons of internet bullying for kids, which thank God there is, but it's still such an untraveled road. So I think the judge is likely going to have a position of where does the freedom of speech come in and where does the protection of a person come in? And again, the way Betty uses their name is never in a non-nefarious way. She is looking with the intent to cause harm, rather it be by incitement, accusing them, threatening them in one way or another. So it's not like she's using her name because she's covering Sebastian. No, she's using her name and it's some form of harassment. And that's, I think, what the judge is ultimately going to see. You have no other good reason to use this name. So I'm curious. I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying, Truth. I think there is a fine line. But every fine line gets drawn somewhere, right? And maybe this is the start for what's going to take place come the future.
Well, one of the things that I've had a hard time understanding, it seems real clear to me, but it seems like the way that I interpreted it is much different than other people. When they were asking for clarification at the last hearing about what the restraining order said, the judge said it says what it says and it doesn't say what it doesn't. And everybody took that, in my opinion, as though, she can't do this, she can't do that. But that's not what he said. What he said was it says what it says, meaning what it says is what it is, and it doesn't what it doesn't, which means if it's not on there, it doesn't apply. That's how I interpreted that. It seems like I'm one of the very few that interpreted it that way.
Yeah, because I looked at it more like I felt he should have taken that moment to actually clarify because, their question could have been more specific, right? Like they could have said, does this include social media? Am I not allowed to say their name at all on social media? And if he would have responded to that instead of saying, it covers what it does and whatever, then but that's where she has her argument, right? Because when she read through the RO papers, nowhere in there does it state anything about social media. But because those papers are so generic and outdated, it's not going to say social media. The judge has to write it in or has to mention it during the trial. Because I don't know if many people know this, but it's not just what's on the RO papers. It's also what is stated during trial. So if a judge says during trial, you're not allowed, that his trial word is as good as those papers thereafter, so long as you have the transcript.
Yeah, but I think that was the point of the case today. Was this is the day that they are discussing all of that, because at the end, when he's talking to the attorney, Betty's attorney, he says, he says the 3 are active, the 1 is temporary, so they're still there. He said we will go over the Chris Proudfoot's and then the other 3. So he specifically says they're going to go over the other 3.
Yeah, because I think, does she file for modification, right?
No, well, he's filing for him to be thrown out, not modification.
Oh, so
He's
he wants a
filing under the
complete
fact,
dismissal.
correct.
I'm shocked that they're able to do
Under
that without going to appeal courts and stuff, but Tennessee's different.
Well, there's a section he quoted, which is like 6022 or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it essentially is based off of the January 1st law that was passed in Tennessee that most people aren't talking about, which was anything more than, I think it's 2 or 4 violations is a felony on an RO or a domestic violence situation, right? In that, it speaks about cross state line or over state line restraining orders. So when Betty was talking about having to go through certain means for her to be served, I hate to say it, but my understanding of the law is she's not 100% wrong, right? That there are different, when you run a restraining order through NCIC, being an out of state restraining order, there are specific things that through the new law have to be done. And I think that's what the attorney is talking.
It's the new law. Do you know? Like, what does it actually?
It essentially says it's either 2 or 4. I can't be for sure which one. I don't remember off the top of my head, but 2 or 4 violations of a restraining order results in a felony.
And he's arguing that. So, all right, so
what
fine. We won't give her a felony, but it'll be a misdemeanor. You know what I mean?
No, the argument is in that law, it discusses over state line restraining orders and the process of delivering those restraining orders. And I believe that's what she and the attorney are arguing, is that it didn't go through that. It went from, Sumner County to Bradenton, or Bradenton to her, or wherever the sheriff.
I think your argument would work very well if she didn't fully admit that she knew she was being served on national TV multiple times, and also that she was told and she has YouTube comments stating that she was told by an attorney that she could just dodge them for a year. I'm not sure the judge is going to be too appreciative of that.
I agree.
I'm not fully even understanding like what you're saying, to be honest. Like, there's a certain way to serve the violations.
Yeah, so I'll have to look it up and I'll send it to you, Granny. Essentially what it is it gives a process of restraining orders served in another state from the state that it is being issued in. And I know she went in a little bit on her show and discussed about it. Now, I'm not sure if that specifically is going to play a part in the case, but that's my understanding of her argument and her attorney's argument. Now, whether or not that works or not, I have no idea, but that's the way I understand it.
I mean, that's going to be quite an interesting argument that he's going to make. Oh, well, she wasn't properly served, but she knew that she was being served, and she actually had copies of the actual order in her possession that told her exactly what not to do and what to do, and she violated those anyway, and she didn't show up for court twice. And she knew on national TV, and she knew in YouTube comments. I'm wondering, it's an interesting argument the attorney will make. Very interesting.
Oh, I agree with you, BTM. 110% agree with you. However, if the law states that XYZ has to be done, it has to be done, whether she knows about it or not. You know what I mean? And once again, I would love to see her punished for the actions that I believe she's committed, right? But I also think that we have to look at things the way it is, or the way it might be. Could she be charged with evasion of service? Maybe. But I'm not familiar enough with it. It's just an opinion, I guess, on my part.
So is it basically arguing who has jurisdiction?
Maybe not. I don't know about it so much jurisdiction as much as it is, did the sheriff's department of her town have the right to serve it, or was it supposed to be served in a different manner?
Okay, I see. Well, yeah, so these are protective orders, not restraining orders. But here's the thing. While I agree with that there may be some go around with that, at the end of the day, like Tim said, she fully acknowledged that she was fully 100% aware. Mm-hmm. So I think
you're right. She did.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem.
You're right.
It's normally if she just pretended to not be so like, oh, I never seen that. I don't know nothing about it, guys. But she went on national TV and she acknowledged it, and she also had two options to show up, and she decided not to. And they even knocked on her door, and she was actually, I think she was served in Manatee County. Actually, wasn't she served basically 2 days before for her second time around? That's why it said served. So I think she was served in Manatee County on three of them, not the Chris one, but the other ones. So I don't know what her argument's going to be. I think the lawyer might be just doing a Hail Mary right now. And that's just my opinion of it. He's trying to dismiss it and hopefully try to do a Hail Mary. But that's just,
Could be, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely could be.
Said she lied to the judge multiple times before you got there. Here, Btim True
Yep.
said she. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, it's Betty. When does she not lie? When does she not lie? Is the real question. When she's not looking at the camera, you know she's lying. She lies about everything. She's probably not even looking at the judge when she's lying.
You liar! You liar! You liar! You liar!